Welcome on into the First Round Fantasy Podcast, your home for second round advice. I'm Gabriel Montes. I'm with the fantasy wide receiver guru today, and it's perfect because we're talking wide receivers, risers, and fallers on today's episode. That fantasy wide receiver guru is himself, Justin Morsaz. How we doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. That's a appreciative introduction for myself. I like to think I am, but thank you for validating it.
Dude, you don't think it. You know it, man. You know it.
I know it, but no one seems to listen.
Well, I listened to the take a few years ago when it was all about Allen Robinson and no one else wanted to. I listened to you, man, and it paid off, and it's been paying off the last couple of years. So
that was a 9th round steal of my life.
Dude, oh my gosh, tremendous value. And he's here to give you some more expert wide receiver advice today. Again, before we get into it, I just want to thank everybody for stopping on by. Be sure to like and subscribe. Find us anywhere you get your podcast, from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else. Also, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at First Round Fantasy to get some fantasy content, daily fantasy content. Before we get into our wide receiver topics of risers and fallers today, this is the last one. We did QBs and running backs a couple of weeks ago, so be sure to go back and look at those episodes. But we're focusing on the wide receiver core today. Some would argue is the most depth, or I should say there's the most depth at this position, so we're going to get into that. But we're going to start with some hype noise news, and what better way to talk about hype news than to focus on wide receivers, because that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to take it over to Las Vegas first. Raiders head coach John Gruden wants Henry Ruggs to become more involved in the offense this year. Obviously, last year as a rookie, wide receiver 89, nothing special really going on there. But, I mean, I feel like if you really, truly watched Raiders football, which at times it was hard to last year, coming from a Raiders fan myself, you'll notice that there were many of times where Ruggs' speed was on full showcase. And I just don't think that they were on the right chemistry level and timing level last year. But connect on just a few of those passes, I mean, Ruggs jumps all the way up into the 40s, man, because he had some potential bombers last year. I know that I'm high on him. I have him as a sleeper this year. I think, Justin, you might have him as a sleeper this year. What are your thoughts, man?
Sleeper is difficult to say. I can't imagine him being a wide receiver 1 or 2 yet. But as a solid flex play, I like him. I really do, especially at his ADP. He's pretty undervalued, in my opinion. And you saw flashes. And I think there's room for wide receivers like that in fantasy football that will give you a 70-yard touchdown any given pass, So I do want to take a flyer on him anytime.
Exactly. So that was my question to you. Like, you had mentioned that his value is tremendous, right? Basically, like you can take him with one of your last 2 picks in the draft. So would you take one of your last 2 picks? Does Henry Ruggs then become that deep flyer dart throw that you want to take? I mean, look at this. No more Nelson Aguilar. You're getting the hype coach talk. I mean, only thing it's really just low risk, high reward at this point. So are you going to throw a dart throw at Henry Ruggs? You just said yes. Can you confirm?
I mean, most definitely. And I don't like to give away my secret strategies, but he's a player. I'm going to do it because I'm a fan of the people. I want to help him. So let's consider every fantasy football draft and what it always comes down to. You have majority of your league drafting running backs round 1, round 2, and they just go off the board. So what they like to do is running back, then focus on their wide receivers. And then at the end of the draft, they're always trying to chase that running back that could be something. And I like to chase the wide receiver that could be something, because those people who passed on high-end wide receivers are always going to be looking for some valuable wide receiver to throw in, because most likely they're going to be short. So if Henry Ruggs ends up being like Tyler Boyd of 2 years ago, you just turned a late round pick into a 3 to 6 round value pick. And that's what I like in Ruggs, basically, because if he ends up being McCole Hardman on steroids for his team, then he's gonna, and I think he can, because everyone always wants to pick McCole Hardman just because he plays for the Chiefs. but they almost do the similar roles for each other. And we've seen enough of McColl to know what he's going to do. But I still want to give Ruggs a chance. So I'll definitely take a wide receiver like him late than, I don't know, no disrespect, like a Fitzgerald in past years.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. I mean, he is situated to become the wide receiver one for the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that there are always teams out there that are skeptical when you're like, I don't really want any shares. You know, we always talk about the New York Jets. But you know what? Give Las Vegas some respect. Give Derek Carr some respect that he deserves. I think that Henry Ruggs, like you said, probably not a wide receiver one, probably not a wide receiver two, definitely a wide receiver three or a flex play, in my opinion, going into this season, which warrants him top 40 success, which is far more than he would have seen last year as he finished as number 89 wide receiver. So I think we're in agreement there. Buy the hype and take Henry Ruggs at your convenience because he's likely going to be there in the later rounds. Let's move on. Let's talk about another wide receiver, this time over in Cincinnati. The offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals has said that T. Higgins looks more explosive this season than he did last season. Obviously, you know, he has the highest draft capital of the three Cincinnati Bengals, currently going in the middle of the 7th round. Tyler Boyd currently going early in the 9th round, and Jamar Chase currently going at the end of the 9th round. With that being said, Justin, which of the three Bengal wide receivers, given their ADP, are you willing to take a shot on in 2021?
I mean, I'll take them all at all their ADPs, just to be clear. But
well, you can't have three wide receivers off the same team.
If I had to say, that's so hard because I don't watch much college football, but I did a lot of video watching on Chase because I wanted to know. And if he's as good as everyone says he's going to be, then I have to say he has the best value. But I love Boyd. I don't see Boyd's role moving. Like he's the mid like 5 to 12 yard guy, and I love that in PPR realm. But Higgins is a beast and underrated. When you talk Lamb and Jefferson, no one really wanted to throw Higgins in that list, but I like the boom potential with Chase. So at the latest 909, I go Chase.
You know what? And again, we're on the same level of agreement here. You mentioned Boyd. He played in the slot last year, or no, that's not true. He lined up outside last year. This year, he probably will find himself in that closer range, which is what he saw a lot of last year. So you might as well could have said he played in the slot. But Higgins and Chase definitely lining up outside. You know, we talked a lot about Joe Burrow, and we talked about Jamar Chase on our rookie preview shows. You want to think that chemistry is a real thing, given that they both played together in college. I am a huge proponent of value, knowing that the wide receiver position is always the deepest. You know, there are running backs in the 7th round if I'm going 0 RB, or if I just want to shore up my depth at the running back position. There are guys there in the 7th round that I can take, whether it's a Chase Edmonds, James Conner. Well, probably not James Conner, but Chase Edmonds, because I'm really high on him this year, and a few other names to mention. So with that being said, I don't think Chase has a 909 value rest of the offseason. Let's just say he jumps into the 8th round in terms of value. So would you take Higgins in the 7th or Chase in the 8th? You still going with the high upside, high potential of Jamar Chase?
I don't think you can go wrong, to be honest. I would, for the sake of argument, I'm gonna go if they're that close, I'll just go Higgins because I like him a lot. I'm a Higgins guy, but if Chase ends up better, I'm not surprised at all. The thing about the Bengals is that unlike the Cowboys, where they were dumping a lot off to Zeke and dumping a lot off to what's the backup's name?
Tony Pollard.
They did use him a lot, and then Dak got hurt. They actually used their tight end a little bit, and I don't think Sample or Zuma are going to be keystones to their offensive game. They're just going to get sprinkled in. So that's why I think actually all three for the first time maybe can truly be valuable together. So I'm not really worrying about – I have a preference, but I'm not worrying who falls to me because I'd be happy with all of them given the speculation around them.
Yeah, 100%. That offense as a whole is very pass happy. They're going to throw a lot in 2021. It's similar to in respect to like a Pittsburgh Steelers offense, which we're going to talk about later. But, you can't really go wrong with any of those three guys, or so we say, because, again, we'll talk about that later. But when you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, Chase is a guy, even if he slips into the 8th round, I still want that upside. I want that potential. I want that what if in the 8th round, and I'll take Jamar Chase. So Higgins, Chase, for the sake of argument, I'm okay with that, and I think you can't go wrong with either one. Let's move on to the cream of the crop, risers and fallers for the wide receivers here today. We're going to start with our fallers. And again, just to give you a little bit of a pretext into how we do this, we look at the top 15 from last year, and we kind of ask ourselves, are these guys primed for success, or can we possibly see them take a dip in the rankings, or at least in fantasy finishes? That doesn't mean they have to fall completely out of the top 15. However, they could fall just far enough to make them a distinguishable wide receiver 2 compared to a wide receiver 1. All right. Then we'll go back and we'll look at our risers, and that's looking at the bottom 15 of last year. So our top 30, maybe even a little bit more outside of that range, and then seeing who we can project in to that top 15 range to give them that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 caliber start that you want on your fantasy roster. I'm done talking. I'm handing it over to the wide receiver guru himself, Justin Morsaz, who is your first faller of the 2021 season at the wide receiver position.
Thank you. So this is where I make my bread and butter, because this is where this is where I win leagues, because I don't chase halfbacks. I'm a wide receiver guy, so I want to look at them closely. So the first one, and I think he's first for sure for me, and that's Adam Thielen. And as a Viking fan, I watch a lot of him. I love him. I think he's great. But what he did last year, in my opinion, is not replicatable, if that's a word. I don't know. You cannot.
It's totally.
You cannot get 14 touchdowns a year. If you watched him, there were multi-touchdown games, and he was just blowing it up. And the emergence of Justin Jefferson, the talk about getting a tight end more involved, and his age going a little bit higher. He's only 30, so it's not super old, but I'm not expecting him to stay top 10, maybe not even top 15. I think he goes back to a natural regression of anywhere from 5 to 8 touchdowns, but he was very fun to have in fantasy, because all of a sudden you'd see PPR hype, and then you'd see a touchdown, and you're like, dude, you're giving me everything. And not to say he's not valuable, because the PPR life that he lives is still great to have, but the touchdowns probably won't come as often.
Yeah, 100%.
I think he stands out. No, I think my question to you is, do you still consider him a wide receiver 1 or more of the 2-3 range?
I kind of think you hit it right on the pocket here. And I'm going to bring up Mike Evans, because we brought up Mike Evans last week. When we talk about touchdowns, they are the most unpredictable, and again, if it's not a word, we're making a new one here today, Justin, unreplicatable statistic in football. You just can't predict touchdowns year in and year out for any given player. And like you said, Adam Thielen's 14 touchdown year was an anomaly. He had 4 multi-touchdown games last year. And I don't think that's replicatable. Well, I think it is a word, but we're going to go with it.
No, it's not. I thought I remember.
We're making it a word, damn it.
Right.
It's replicatable. I don't think it's replicatable. And
replicable. Okay.
But I do think where you said, a lot of people were dependent on his PPR success last year and then found out, well, this guy's getting me 14 touchdowns. This is insane. I think there is a world where he returns to that, because Minnesota, they're going to return to the run game in 2020, just like they did. Actually, they had quite the fantasy success for all players last year, wide receivers, QBs, and running backs. I think there is a world, though, where he finds that PPR success. I think him and Justin Jefferson are primed for a little bit of a top-off. Obviously, Justin Jefferson breaking almost nearly every rookie receiving yard record in the books. I don't think you can just ask him to do that again. I think there's some regression there, but still even a top 10 candidate in my in my respect. But Adam Thielen, of course, I think he warrants wide receiver 2 value, which is what he has been on and off the last few years. And guess what? Those years where he wasn't a wide receiver 2, he was a wide receiver 1. So he is perfectly capable of providing good fantasy numbers, but you cannot rely on him to be the fantasy wide receiver 1 that he was last year, which is why you have him as a faller. And of course, I mean, again, we've been working on our rankings here continuously. I don't think I have him in the top 15, which takes him definitely out of wide receiver 1 contention, but puts him into that strong consideration for a wide receiver 2. Maybe middle of the road, low end wide receiver 2. And I agree with you. I think that's a perfect candidate for a faller and one of 2 you have, right, Justin? Any last thoughts on Adam Thielen before we move on, though?
I would just say, given that information, he's still someone you want on your team. The Vikings have a good offense. Utilize that. Don't shy away from it. Even if he gets 8 touchdowns, he's still going to have a very serviceable and worthwhile year.
Yeah, so I always – exactly. And we can mention that about any of the great offenses in football, right? But I always like to play the ADP game, so we're going to play it. You have Adam Thielen as a faller. He's currently going in the 5th round, middle of it. Would you rather take a guy like him or DJ Moore, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, with his first year with Sam Darnold? He's currently going at the 508. Who would you rather have?
I would definitely go Thielen over DJ Moore just due to predictable factors rather than a new QB and DJ Moore's fluctuation. Okay, but if he ends up higher, I'm not surprised at all.
It's totally fair. I would rather go DJ Moore. I get it. I understand your factors, new QB, new coaching system, all of those things. But there's just so much to like about DJ Moore, and he's a little bit younger. So in Dynasty, of course, that's what you would probably do. Oh, yeah. And I just want to give a quick shout out there. Everyone did hear that Justin is a Vikings fan, which proves First Round Fantasy, sorry, reading that the wrong way, is the home of unbiased fantasy football advice. Has Adam Thielen as his first faller of 2021.
Biasm doesn't win championships.
Let's move on to your second wide receiver faller of the 2021 season. Who is it? Give us your take.
This one was easy for me because similar reasons, but just overall, Tyler Lockett. If you were a Tyler Lockett owner last year, there were moments where you were on fire, and then there were moments you were like, dude, come on, where are you? What are you doing? And there's no way that he's going to have a 5-touchdown game again. There's just no way he's going to replicate more of those boom games. Sure, there might be 1, maybe 2, but depending on that type of statistical production, I don't think it's happening again. They're just going to get better. DK is going to get better. His role is going to go back more to we always want to go back to the mean, back to the averages in this game. And I would just assume that he falls a good amount because you're not getting those 50, 60-point fantasy PPR games out of him 3 or 4 times. It's just not happening.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned that 3-touchdown game. He had 2 of them. He had 2 3-touchdown games. And you were happy when you started Tyler Lockett in those games. But when you didn't, and he didn't have 3 touchdown games, he wasn't really doing anything. I mean, 4 targets or 4 receptions for 33 yards, 4 receptions for 40 yards, 3 receptions for 23 yards. I mean, he literally put up duds. He even has a 5 for 52, 4 for 34, and 3 for 44. So literally 7 weeks there I can think of, and I'm sure there's more, where he was probably outside the top 40 that week in terms of wide receiver production.
I think he had maybe the greatest week in the history of fantasy football for a receiver. I remember at the time maybe Tyreek Hill matched it, or Jerry Rice going back in the day had a game like that. But this dude had 20 targets, 15 catches, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, I'm really regretting that I didn't trade him that week because I was hypnotized. I was like, dude, the Seahawks, oh man, it's a nice rule of thumb that go by more average statistics rather than big outliers, because you could have sold high, you could have got high, and you could have had a better overall team as the weeks went on. So I'm choosing him as a major faller this year.
Yeah, keep in mind, because of that big game, his other 3 touchdown performance was before that. So that was in week 6. After week 6 onward, he caught only 3 more touchdowns. And in one of those games, 2 of them came. So his volume, we're not taking drugs here, his volume and consistency completely dropped off the map. And again, if you were caught in the days like the wide receiver guru himself, Justin Morsaz, you likely wanted to hold on and reap the benefits of Tyler Lockett. However, you were sadly mistaken.
The thing is, you could get wide receiver 1 value for him at the time. Literally, you could have got that. I made mistakes of turning down Diggs. I believe it's some sort of package. I had the mistake of turning down, I think, a larger deal around D-Hop, I think. But the goal is, with these guys that have huge games like Lockett, sell high if you have them.
Yeah, 100%. And, this is kind of similar in tow. I agree with you. I think Tyler Lockett is definitely a faller in 2021. But I agree with you in the respect that it's similar to me, as in, let's look at the Minnesota Vikings as well, like we were just talking about. I think Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are both primed to regress in 2021. I think DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are also primed to regress in 2021. I know that going into last season, I was very high on guys like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So don't listen to me, because I told people to take Tyler Lockett over DK Metcalf.
So hold up.
Go ahead.
DK Metcalf finished 7th overall. You think he's going to finish worse than 7th?
Yeah, I think he'll finish outside the top 10.
Oh, book that down.
I'll book that
down if we can start now.
Joe doesn't want any part of it, even though he had said that he believes DK Metcalf is a top 5 wide receiver. I don't see it.
I'll book that down. I'll write it in everywhere, anywhere.
We can book it down. I'll put it here in the show notes. But I just want to give you my reasoning, because I'm glad someone made this a bet, because now everyone has to have a say on it, the whole entire first-round fantasy team.
Yeah,
but last year, going into 2021, the year before that, DK and Tyler Lockett were like both in the top 10 in red zone targets. There was a lot to like. Russell Wilson was throwing the ball around, and at the start of the season, he certainly was doing that. That offense took a literal plummet 4 or 5 weeks into, I think like 6 or 7 weeks into the season. They absolutely spiraled out of control from what they were the first 7 weeks of the season. DK dropped off. Tyler Lockett dropped off, as we were just talking about. That team wants to run the ball. Russell Wilson has voiced his frustration with the organization as a whole. I just think that there's turmoil going on in that organization that we're not necessarily adept to hearing about yet, because it hasn't become as blown up as we want it to be and all of the fantasy chaos. But I just know that this team wants to run. They have Chris Carson. They're even talking about Rashad Penny again. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to throw the ball a lot. And when he does, it's going to be DK Metcalf. But even then, I'm just not a fan of DK Metcalf, especially at his value. So I think going forward, I think he finishes outside the top 10. That doesn't mean he's not a wide receiver 1. But I would like a guy like Amari Cooper, who I'm not going to talk about, but he finishes a wide receiver 16 last year. You're telling me with a full season with Dak Prescott in the helm, of the numbers that he was putting up the first 4 weeks of the season, that he's not going to return some of that value this year? Amari Cooper is a comeback candidate. I think he sneaks into the top 10. So for every guy that you sneak into the top 10, someone's got to fall out. And I think DK Metcalf is a perfect candidate for that. There are other guys that I think can sneak in there as well. AJ Brown, one of them. He was 11 last year. He can sneak into the top 10. I think Allen Robinson can sneak into the top 10. I'm just saying, man. I'm just voicing my opinion, and I'm glad I got to book it down out of it. So thank you, Justin.
I hear you. My counter to that is there are certain players you just watch and it doesn't matter. This guy is, in my opinion, better than, I think Julio Prime, his length, his strength, his like catchability I think DK is just like insane on that level. So I actually put him top 3 wide receiver. That's why I'm okay with putting this down. And
let's do it, baby. Okay.
The Seattle Seahawks offense was an anomaly last year, as you said. Something happened. I think if they right the ship, there's no doubt about that. If Wilson leaves, I still consider you could put Ben DiNucci as his quarterback, and this guy's still wide receiver one in
well,
my
Wilson's
book.
not going to leave; he'll stay. But I just think that there are things going on that we haven't heard
But
about
you know
yet.
what I'm saying? That's my position. So I guess I'm surprised Joe didn't see the same because he's high on him. But I'm not afraid to make a bold prediction. I guess if that's a bold prediction in my book.
So let me ask you this. I said top 10, you said top 3. Can we find a little bit closer, maybe top 7? Can you bank
No,
it
we agreed top 10. That's why I stayed after the top 10. I still want to win my book and downs, but I can't control the game. I just watch it.
All right, that's fair. I mean, I spoke too soon. I agreed to the book it down, but yeah, I should have just clarified the parameters. He finished as the wide receiver 7 last year, so that's where I was just going with the happy.
We can make a side bet. We can say if Russell Wilson plays the majority of the season, he'll finish top 3.
We'll talk about that then on the side. But there you go, book it down. I don't think I've been a part of any book it down on the podcast yet. So thank you for having me.
I'm a book it down type of guy.
Because I'm a book it down type of guy, and I'm finally glad I have one. Will DK Metcalf finish as a top 10 wide receiver this year? I say no. Justin Marsad says yes. I have a feeling everybody else is going to say he will finish as a top 10 wide receiver as well. Looks like I'm the guy on the outside looking in. But that's it for our fallers of the 2021 season at the wide receiver position. We are moving into risers now. Excuse me here while I get my timestamps right. Sorry, we're running without our producer today, Jacob Bartley. What a drag. He just can't get it together.
Jacob.
I know. Shout out to you, man. So we're moving on now to our risers. I'll let you take a break, Justin. You had both of our fallers today, and they were good ones, in Adam Thielen and Tyler Lockett. I'm here to tell you about some guys that I think are going to take the jump into the top 15 this year. One of those being Juju Smith-Schuster. He is my boy, undoubtedly has been since his rookie season. He's had some hiccups, all right? You got to give the guy a break. You come in your rookie season playing alongside Antonio Brown and put up the numbers he did, you're going to be a happy camper. You're not going to be a happy camper when he comes back a sophomore season as the unquestioned wide receiver 1 on that team and puts up, there's no way around it. He put up some awful numbers, and he wasn't really good for your fantasy team. However, last year, he showed a different side of himself, which is why I'm excited about him in 2021. So let's get into it. He finished as the wide receiver 18 last year. His counterpart, Chase Claypool, finished as the wide receiver 19 last year. And again, all of these stats are in half-point PPR, not full-point PPR. So in half-point PPR, Juju finished number 18. Claypool finished at number 19. 128 targets, 97 receptions, and 831 yards, 9 touchdowns for Juju. His shortest yards per receiving ever, though, at like 6.49. They put him in the slot. They wanted to see if that was a role he could do, and boy, did he do it. And boy, was I excited to see him. Just like we were talking about Adam Thielen earlier. You wanted him to be this PPR guy, then boom, he comes through with the touchdowns. Well, you were always expecting Juju for the last 2 years at least to come in, be that deep wide receiver threat, get you those touchdowns. Last year, he showed he didn't have to do that to give you fantasy success. Again, 97 receptions. That's great in PPR. Probably puts him up higher in PPR rankings. Like his counterpart, Claypool, I had just said, only 62 catches. Obviously, a little bit similar in yardage, though. He had 873 yards. So clearly, Claypool was getting more air yards. Juju Smith-Schuster was getting those short to intermediate routes. And then, of course, you have Deontay Johnson, a force to be reckoned with himself. Unfortunately, with injuries and being benched and all of those things, he finished outside the top 40 last year. A lot of people are high on Deontay Johnson going into this season, though. I'm here to tell you, if there's anybody you want to take from the Pittsburgh Steelers, it is Juju Smith-Schuster. I believe having played on the outside with Antonio Brown shows one way of his skill set. Last year, playing in the slot shows you another way to utilize his skill set. It speaks volumes about his versatility and what he's able to do for this team. There were rumors that up until the deadline to make decisions about Juju Smith-Schuster's career in Pittsburgh, Big Ben himself, Ben Roethlisberger, was on the phone with Juju up until the very end trying to convince this man to come back and play one more season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he did. I'd like to think that plays a big part in terms of chemistry, in terms of the way that replicates itself on the field. Okay? There's a big question about Big Ben Roethlisberger this season. He had arm surgery. His arm was clearly bothering him last season. A lot of people seem to think after a successful surgery, we're going to see more of the same old Big Ben. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think we saw a new form of Big Ben last year, and that's a guy that necessarily doesn't like to chuck it downfield a lot. He likes to throw the ball a lot, but he's going to throw those intermediate to short routes quite a few times more so than the deep balls. With that being said, they add Najee Harris to help stabilize that running back group and to help give that offense a little bit more breathing room. I think we're going to see Big Ben take another step in another form this season in terms of being more of a game manager than that big deep ball threat type of QB that we've seen in years past. I don't want to believe anything I'm hearing about his arm until I actually see it week one, maybe even in preseason. So with that being said, and a big thing about Chase Claypool is too, finishing 19, one spot behind Juju Smith-Schuster, he had multiple rushing attempts and 2 rushing touchdowns. You take those away from Chase Claypool, he's not getting anywhere near Juju in half-point PPR. He's probably taking like 5 or 6 spots back, which is fine. I just think that Juju and his versatility showed a lot last year, and I think that carries into this season. I don't think Big Ben is going to come out and hurl the ball around, 50, 60-yard bombs. I think he's going to keep it short. Juju's a big, burly wide receiver that loves to get the ball in those intermediate routes like he showed last season and just bulldoze people over as he gets 7-8 yards a time. I'm okay with that. Not to mention, when the team needed him most in the playoffs, holy cow. Last year in the playoffs, Juju put up an absurd number, 13 catches, 157 yards, and 1 touchdown on 19 targets. And we saw that was a similar trend towards the end of the season. In the beginning, you were kind of shaking a little bit when you saw that Juju's production was a little, it was up and down. He was very much reliable from week 8 on, PPR monster, 5, 6, 7, 8 catches a game for so many yards, and the touchdowns came with him. Again, we talked about touchdowns earlier. They're not that replicatable, but Juju was also top 10 in red zone targets last year, which is the same thing I said about DK Metcalf going into last year, and which is why I liked DK Metcalf and why I liked Tyler Lockett. It's another reason why I like Juju Smith-Schuster going into 2021. There are guys currently going around him with his value. He's currently going at the back of the 8th round. I'd rather have a guy like him over a guy like Tyler Boyd. I don't know about you, but I'll give you your opinion in a second. I'd rather have him over his teammate, Chase Claypool, who's going a couple of spots ahead of him at the 804. And I most certainly would rather have him over a guy like Will Fuller, who's trying a new scene entirely in Miami. With that being said, I'm done talking. That is my riser for 2021. Justin, do you agree or disagree about my boy Juju Smith-Schuster? I know you're quite the Deontay Johnson fan yourself.
I'm not actually. Joey is.
Yeah, never mind.
But I would say if there's any Juju fanboys out there, Gabe's the one to go to because he just gave you a life's bio on that man. I didn't even know all that. But I don't disagree with you, but I don't agree with you. I think where he is where he's going to be because there's a lot of mouths to feed. No disrespect to his ability or games, but that offense is wide receiver heavy. They got a new toy at halfback that should get a couple receptions. but I like him. I wish he signed elsewhere to be a highlight, like maybe Las Vegas, wink wink, but that didn't happen. So I
I would have
don't
been true
see
fanboy
him.
if that happened.
I don't see him rolling up to wide receiver one. Just too many mouths to feed with an aging quarterback.
Too many mouths to feed with an aging quarterback. And there's a lot going against him. You're right. Deontay Johnson saw 144 targets last year. That was the most of the three wide receivers. Juju was second with 128. Chase Claypool third with 106. I like Deontay Johnson, as much as it hurts me to say it, because I want Juju to be undoubtedly the unquestionable wide receiver one on that team, and he's not just yet. But Deontay Johnson, although great last year, given spurts, he wasn't great all the time as he finished outside the top 40. I think there is a world where, again, we see Juju. I can see an uptick in targets. I can see him probably, not an uptick, but I can see the targets being there. So we had 128 last year. I can see that staying between 110 and 130. I think he can float somewhere around there. 97 catches, I think he can easily get over 100 catches with that, especially if he fine-tunes those route running skills in the pocket and the slot. 831 yards, though, that's a little questionable. I don't know if he breaks 1,000. And touchdowns are so unpredictable, like we have said time and time again so far today. But with that being said, that's purely hype train noise for me. If anyone could do it, I want to see Juju replicate that again in 2021. Again, top 10 in targets last year inside the red zone. And I just think that those don't go away. Touchdowns will fall. But if Juju's top 10 in red zone targets last year, he's going to be top 10 in red zone targets this year. And I want to see it. I want to believe it. That's why Juju is my riser for 2021. And now that I think about it, man, I really was talking for a while. I should have wrote a book.
It's good knowledge, man. It's good knowledge.
I was talking and my mouth was dry, dude. It's just when you love a guy so much like Juju, man, you just can't.
Yeah, I'm a respectively disagree with that.
All right. Well, I'll save the book of downs, but I am going to hand it back over to you. Who is your second riser at the wide receiver position in 2021?
So I have two big ones, and this is, I know I said I make my money avoiding those guys, but I really make my money picking the right guys. And I wish it was more undercover, but other people see it too. Terry Scary McLaurin is the guy. No matter what, I think he bumps up quite easily. Like the quarterback play that he'd had to experience during his career has been pretty annoying to deal with. Now he has the gunslinger from all over, Fitzmagic throwing him the ball. He may only play there 1 year. I don't know. But this year, I want McLaurin on my team, not just because I think he's great, but now he has a quarterback to feed his greatness. And it's just a no-brainer to me. If you're talking Mike Evans or McLaurin, I don't even think about it. He's literally up in the echelon of bordering that eliteness, but he's just never done it. So he's behind AJ Browns of the world, really obviously, but he's just, to me, he's put himself in that second tier undoubtedly.
Undoubtedly. And you bring up Fitzmagic. He has been widely known to hyper focus on his wide receiver ones. He was the guy that kind of rejuvenized Devontae Parker's career in Miami. He's done it for countless others. I will argue to say that McLaurin is probably the best wide receiver that he's ever had the opportunity of throwing to, which is why I agree with you. This is the spot made in football heaven. Fitzmagic to Terry McLaurin all day, every day. I want to eat it up. Do you have a hypothetical projected finish for our man, Terry McLaurin? Can he crack the top 12?
Yeah, I think so. I think he cracks top 12. I was almost going to go top 10, but there are a lot of good guys out there. The thing is, right here, we talk about touchdowns. It's disgusting to me that he only saw the end zone 4 times last year. Like, a player of his caliber, I know the team, Magic, they're going to get him more receptions in the red zone, and I think it's going to translate big for the guys. So that team is good. Their defense was great. So now their offense can maybe match it. And as a winning football team, I want a piece of winning football teams. So either you're really, really good or you're really, really bad. either you're throwing a lot or you're just winning games. Being in the middle doesn't help a lot, and that's where they were last year. So I hope Magic and some twinks bring him up and get him 8 touchdowns would be great.
8 touchdowns would be great. He hasn't seen that yet, but that's certainly possible with Fitzmagic at the helm. Justin, obviously, I think everybody's going to agree with you. We love Terry McLaurin. Do you have one more? This is a bonus from the wide receiver guru himself. Do you have one more wide receiver who you can see cracking the top 15 this year?
I know
riser?
I know if Joe and Jacob were listening to me right now, they'd be very surprised because they pitched this guy to me so many times that I'm like, nope, don't want it. This year is different. And why does history matter when deciding on a wide receiver? It's because my man Cooper Kupp is the selection this year. And you want to say, yes, it's because Stafford. Okay, obviously, that's not the only reason, though. Like, Stafford makes him go from, wow, I'm thrown with Goff to I'm getting a real quarterback. But it also, you have to look at the top of mindness that Cooper Kupp has on him. When the Rams went on that run of that insane offensive year, all their players got boosted because of it. And if you had Kupp the last 2 years, you probably got burnt off that expected value. So now that we're on year 3 removed, his top of mind not only gets decreased because of that, but you have all the rookies, JJ, Higgins, CD, all of them. And then you have Shark coming into the mix with Trevor Lawrence. Like, all those mid-tier guys that you think get a bump because they're experienced that situation, it all goes above guys like Cooper Kupp, all guys above Robert Woods. You're going to
very much overshadowed. Yes,
you're going to draft them if it's available. But look, like last year, Marvin Jones Jr. finished 17. Cooper Kupp finished 27. In no world am I drafting Marvin Jones Jr. over Cooper Kupp. And I'm not saying anybody would. I'm just saying if you go statistically speaking. So Cooper Kupp, there's so many hot on fire rookies from last year and some good rookies this year. And, the Juju Smiths of the world that you're talking about, this guy's flying under the radar for me with a new quarterback that wants to win in a nice defense. They finally have a quarterback they want to get to winning. Cooper Kupp's going to be a main focus point on that. And I like Robert Woods, but the reason I went with Cooper Kupp over Robert Woods is because he finished significantly lower than Woods. But I like both of them, just to go on record.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more about the Cooper Kupp pick. Recency bias is a real thing. So when Cooper Kupp put up that huge year a couple of years ago, like you said, it stayed with a lot of people. And then, therefore, a lot of people were burned over the last 2 years by Cooper Kupp's production. Let me ask you, is Matthew Stafford an upgrade over Jared Goff?
Absolutely.
The Rams are clearly going to throw the ball. They've had no signs of, saying otherwise. They threw the ball I was going to curse there. They threw the ball a whole lot last year. They're going to throw the ball a lot this year. I think Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods take significant leaps. It's not even to say Robert Woods had a bad year, but there's a world where both of these guys can be better. So for a bonus wide receiver, Cooper Kupp is an excellent riser for the 2021 season. Well, Justin. Go ahead.
I just want to say he had a really nice 2019 year. It's just that with the influx of other people coming into the league, he's going to be great value.
He's going to be outstanding value. And again, Justin, there's nobody I would rather do a wide receiver special show with than the wide receiver guru himself. Justin, thank you so much for being here. Everybody else who stayed this long, you get an extra thank you for listening till the end. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can follow us anywhere you get your podcast, as well as find us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at First Round Fantasy. Hopefully, these guys pay off for you. We think they will. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.